It was supposed to be a peaceful camping trip amongst a group of friends. Summer was approaching and the teens were looking forward to a pleasant weekend. But that would quickly turn into a nightmare, as 3 will be dead before their summer ventures begin. This is the true crime case of Finland's infamous unsolved homicide case. On June 4th, 1960, 18-year-old Seppo and Nils, along with their 15-year-old girlfriends Mela and Anja, pitched a tent along the shore of Lake Bodom, a camping spot near the Finnish city of Espoo. The lake was crystal clear and the water had plenty of fish. The wooded surroundings made it the perfect spot for a group of teenagers. They drank, partied, and even fished a little, enjoying the night in each other's company away from their parents. When the night ended, the couples retreated to the tent they had pitched, peaceful, serene, and unsuspecting of any kind of danger. The teenagers would never know that they were spending their very last moments together because somewhere lurking in the woods was an uninvited guest, a shadowy figure with red eyes. Around 4 to 6 a.m., a mysterious man crept closer and closer to the tent. Suddenly, the peacefully asleep campers were attacked by an unknown assailant. The teens were bludgeoned and viciously stabbed through the sides of their tent. On June 5th, around 6 a.m., 2 boys were hiking through a birdwatching expedition, noticed a blond man walking away from the teens' camp, and saw the tents were collapsed. However, they carried on and never went near the campsite. Then, around 11 a.m., a man named Esko was passing the campsite with his boys. Their peaceful fishing trip would soon be disrupted. Esko noticed 2 motorcycles that looked abandoned. As he took a closer look, he saw the horrific bloodbath. There, a bright-colored tent stood stained black by the blood. A boy lay on top of the tent. He had clothes on but no shoes. Esko then hears a faint noise. One is alive. He quickly called the police and they arrived on the scene around noontime. Nils' girlfriend Mela was on top of the tent, pulled halfway out, undressed from the waist down. She had also had more injuries than any of the other victims, having been stabbed multiple times, even after she was already dead. Nils was the only survivor with a concussion and a fractured jaw. He was found laying next to his girlfriend. Oddly, the murderer attacked the teens from the outside of the tent and didn't leave a murder weapon around, nor were any of the objects identified. They also ran off with the keys to the teens' motorcycles, but as I mentioned, the motorcycles were still where they were parked. Seppo's leather jacket was also taken, and his knife. To investigators, the perpetrator wanted to kill the teens quickly as their skulls were crushed and they had numerous stab wounds in the abdomen. Again, all the blows were done from outside the tent, enclosing the victims in the torn tent. The tent wrapped around them, looking like they had already been in body bags. Nils' shoes were found hidden roughly half a mile away from the site, along with clothes belonging to the victims. Sadly, the police failed to secure the area. They even enlisted the help of soldiers to find the victims' missing items, leading to further contamination of the crime, as additional people trampled through it, thus making certain forensic evidence was nearly impossible to obtain. Remember the group of birdwatchers that were first to see the campsite? Well, they noticed a blond man walking away from the site. Who could this be? People suspected Nils was the murderer. They believe he tried to hide his own shoes and the bloody clothes of the victims. However, he sustained quite painful injuries that would make it nearly impossible for him to run into the woods, conceal the evidence, and then run back to the tent. Some even believe he injured himself after committing the murders. On Monday, June 13, 1960, a little over a week after the triple murders, Mela, Anja, and Seppo are buried in the nearby town. Their white coffins are covered with beautiful flowers. Meanwhile, Nils is recovering. When asked about his memories of the event that left him scarred, Nils could only say with certainty that he heard strange noises and glimpsed a pair of red eyes moving towards the tent before losing consciousness. Another suspect was Karl Vladimir, who owned a kiosk business at the campgrounds. Despite this, he hated campers and allegedly threw rocks at them and even went as far as cutting their tent spikes if they made too much noise, which to the public made him the perfect murderer to those who believed he snapped and killed the teens. Karl was eventually interviewed by investigators, but his wife claimed he was asleep laying next to her the night of the murders. Strangely, he confessed to the crime several times over the years. In 1969, Karl drowned in Lake Bodom. It is unknown if it was intentional. Some believe it was the guilt of the murders. However, police have never found any physical evidence linking him to the killings, and considered him a disturbed individual whose confession should not be taken seriously. The other major suspect was Hans Assmann, an alleged spy and former Nazi. On the morning of June 6, 1960, he came into the hospital with dirt under his nails and clothes covered in red stains. Unfortunately, even when the doctor insisted that it was blood on his clothes, the police never took it in to examine, and after a quick questioning, they found he had a solid alibi. Strangely, after seeing a news report about the murders, in which they released the young boy's description of the man they saw leaving the crime scene, Hans cut his long blonde hair. While under hypnosis, Nils gave a description of the killer that also matched the description of Hans. This is a police sketch done after the hypnosis. This photograph of the victim's funeral shows a man who eerily resembles the police sketch. The man was never identified or seen again. Could this have been the killer? There were also 2 young fishermen who were spotted the night of the murders. They were never identified and never came forward even when asked to. What's even more strange is that they left several fish behind. Hans was considered the suspect until 2004, when the case was reopened after 44 years. Blood evidence was uncovered on a pair of shoes. The blood was found to be of the 3 teenagers who were murdered, but none of it belonged to Nils. If the shoes belonged to Nils, why would there be blood on it if he wasn't wearing them that night? Nils' blood was found in the tent, as well as everyone else's. Ultimately, Nils was charged with the murder. The prosecution argued that Nils killed his girlfriend Mela in a fit of jealous rage, which would explain why her body was outside of the tent and had more injuries than any of the other teenagers. A sudden testimony from a woman who had been allegedly camping at the time of the murders claimed that Nils had entered her tent and acted aggressively. But why, after 40 years, did she wait to come forward? And how much details would have been forgotten if any of it was true? Nils served 1 year of his life sentence after a successful appeal granted him his freedom. Who do you believe killed the teens? With the case being so old now, it is unlikely we will ever find out. It will continue to haunt the people in Finland and people around the world. There is something so unsettling about this case. This case reminds me a lot of the Robison Murders. In a strange way, they're very similar. If you haven't seen that video yet, I'll link it down below. Thank you for watching. For now, take care and stay safe.